My project mainly focused on substance abuse and childhood development disorders. The social problem to my research project was that the use of substances by caregivers or parental figures throughout an individual's childhood can later cause childhood development disorders. And this can be due to neglect, trauma, etc., and just being exposed to substance abuse and that being the primary focus of their life. And also, early childhood adversity is associated with increased risk for psychiatric disorders, including substance abuse and addiction.
For the background information from my research study, one thing is that the family always remains the primary source of attachment for the individual, meaning that nurturing and socialization for humans in our society is very important, especially for children to be ready to integrate into society. Growing up in a house full of substance abuse can teach the child a different norm from what society really is and what the difference is between right and wrong. Also, each family and each family member is uniquely affected by the individual that is using the substances, and this is not limited to the effect of having unmet developmental needs, impaired attachment, economic hardship, legal problems, emotional distress, and sometimes violence towards an individual.
The research question for my topic was, what effect does growing up around substance abuse have on development of childhood developmental disorders? And my hypothesis was that there is a direct connection between growing up around substance abuse and later being diagnosed with either a childhood development disorder or a learning disability. For my research design, my research was completed by using meta-analysis. I used data that others already conducted to complete my own set of data and make a conclusion pertaining to my research topic. For data collection, I used Google Scholar to find the research studies. The keywords that I used to find my articles were substance abuse and childhood development. I got a few sources from the NCBI journal, which had a focus on substance abuse and childhood development. I had a research study performed by Martha Morrison-Dorr, who has a PhD in social work. She was mainly looking at substance abuse and learning disorders, and then a study performed by SAMHSA that focuses on the effects on children who live with parents that have a substance abuse disorder, and then also a source from the APA, which is the American Psychology Association, that focused on the effects on the brain that growing up with a substance abuse caregiver could have. And in total, I had 4 research studies that focused on my topic. For my sample, I used data that was available online, multiple research studies that had been previously conducted, allowing for an expansion on data collection, which allowed me to make new conclusions when analyzing my data. I also found information for government and non-government agencies. There's usually valuable and relevant data from the agencies that's available to the general public, allowing for expansion of research. It usually includes their statistics and what they have found within their practice. For the limitations of the study, my study is solely based off of only 4 previous research studies, which could cause for possible gaps within data that I could be missing. There is a lack of available and reliable data depending on what is available for previous studies. A lot of it could be qualitative instead of quantitative, allowing us to not be able to crunch numbers. The measure used to collect data can cause an inability to conduct a thorough analysis of results because I was not able to collect the data myself, and then time constraints on the study used, which can include the age of the data, which could be outdated from what our society is now.
Shown in the results of this slide are my 4 studies that I used to conduct the research project. Within the specific categories of the research question, objectives, and hypothesis is the first row, the independent variables, and then the dependent variables. Shown in the table on this slide are the results that I got from each of my 4 articles within the categories of data, sample, and the type of data analysis used. Shown in this table of results are the findings and limitations of my 4 research studies used to complete my project. For the common findings of the 4 study, There was a lot of substance abuse in caregivers throughout the childhood, which later led to learning and developmental issues within children. It also helped me conclude that there is indeed a direct link between substance abuse in caregivers and growing up with a delayed development. Some of the differences in findings that I found is that ADHD can be developed, which I was a little weary at first, and not all of the research studies included that. Learning delays can be a result of substance abuse, and substance abuse does not have to solely be the parents to cause these delays. It can be a caregiver or a person that the child spends a lot of time with. For the limitations of the research study, one is that the study was done solely on research studies that were already completed, and it does not allow for a wide variety of results. Also tying into that is that it was meta-analysis, meaning that I did not produce any new results, only using data from old studies, meaning that my study did not produce new data. There was also a time constraint when extracting data from the studies, which can cause a lapse in the data understood in the way that it was perceived throughout my study. When concluding my study, I thought about recommendations for future research. One was that more recent studies on the direct linkage between substance abuse and which type of development order is most common among the results should be done, so that we have a further understanding of what disorders can come from this. The second would be conducting a study on how the substance abuse directly affects a child and what causes the lapse in development. Understanding this piece would help us understand how to help substance abusing parents and teaching them what it can do to their children when they are using around them.